Oh, what location?
Oh, yes, thank you, Mary Lou. We have 2 locations here in the Memphis area. We've got where we represent the Union location. We are connected by University right next to Tops Barbecue, and then we have one out in Bartlett area or North Memphis area on Austin P Highway. We have about 180 locations in the United States. Any other questions? Thank you. All right, I'm gonna let Callie kind of take it away with our stroke.
Hey, thank you. Thank you guys for having us here today. Actually, next month, May, is considered Stroke Awareness Month. So if you kind of see a lot of that education coming from a lot of hospitals, that is why. April is Occupational Therapy Month, so thank you for your occupational services and help with patients. So I have a PowerPoint that I actually provide to our patients at our hospital each week. If you're not already kind of familiar with some talk or discussion about stroke in the U.S., we are, if we looked at a map of the United States, we are in the stroke belt region, meaning we're very densely affected by strokes in this area. And a lot of that probably has to do with lifestyle. Yes. Which can really come down to diet and exercise. Not judging anybody for eating that barbecue. So with that, though, we do want to continue to provide education. And a lot of times our patients will say, if I've just known sooner about signs or symptoms or things I should be doing, maybe I could have prevented this. So I hope this helps you in that standpoint, or maybe you can pass this on to someone else. But on our team, we do have kind of a range of individuals. I'm with speech therapy, we have occupational therapy, physical therapy, and also our chaplain. So I'll go to our next slide. Are there any questions that you have about stroke before I dive into a lot of information? Yes, sir.
Callie, I was my arm went to sleep one time and I had rested on wrong, and I kept trying to shake that out, and I'd never experienced it before. But anyway, I said, well, let's go to the hospital just to be out with my right arm, not so much left. And we ended there and they did all the study, and it turned out just fine. And I was wondering if you had any suggestions on concerning arms, and if they're kind of an early indicator of possible stroke activity.
Sure. I'm not exactly sure about what body part could be a more earlier indication, because symptoms can range. But a lot of times we will tell our patients exactly what you said. Like, if I woke up and had a symptom I don't normally experience and it kind of lingered, or it made you go, what's going on? It's always best to go get checked out. Strokes can happen in different parts of the brain and affect different parts of the body. So that could have, if it were stroke symptoms, or if they would have told you this might be a TIA, it could have been in an area of the brain that was just affecting that one arm. But
yeah, when it turned out to be a bruise, I had injured it during the ice storm. I was falling over a railing. That's what it turned out to be.
Sure.
But
I'm still glad that you went and got it checked out, because, like you said, it was a symptom you weren't used to experiencing, and at least
you think that a lot, Kelly, on them, where they really avoid those symptoms? That
I think it's because people don't know signs or symptoms first, and then I think secondly, because we know with TIA, which is kind of the warning stroke, symptoms can come on and go away. So when people feel fine later, they're like, I'm fine, I don't need to go anywhere. But it could have been that warning sign or early indication, and if they would have gone to the hospital and that's what it was, they would have gone, oh wait, hold on, we got something brewing somewhere, let's figure out where it is and see if we can stop it now before it resurfaces and happens in the future.
Thank you.
Great question. All right, well, I'll continue then. So this is interactive. So what I'm teaching you, I hope you teach back to me, okay? I'm preparing you for the quizzes. So a stroke. A lot of people hear the term and they're like, it's a stroke. What does that really mean? So in our body, we know we have blood vessels. That's how blood moves or circulates. We want blood to move or circulate because it's bringing oxygen. We definitely need oxygen to the brain to keep living. So when a stroke happens, it does occur in the brain, and this is likely either due to a blockage in that blood vessel, keeping that blood from flowing, or that blood vessel has kind of lost its structure and starts to kind of balloon or pouch and eventually rupture or burst. Some other things to know. So we know we were just talking about needing oxygen. If we don't get oxygen restored to that area of the brain, it's likely to die. And then also maybe some terms that you hear similar to stroke could be brain attack. The more common medical term is cerebrovascular accident. So there are actually two main types of strokes. I think a lot of times when people experience a stroke, it's important to know which type you had, because sometimes maybe there are certain risk factors more closely associated with those types. And from there, you might can determine better prevention plans with your primary doctor. So the first type that we'll talk about is a hemorrhagic stroke. This is where, like we said, the blood vessel kind of loses its structure in balloons or pouches outwards. That balloon or pouch is called an aneurysm. So that's what it looks like before it eventually bursts in what they call a hemorrhage or brain bleed. So again, this is kind of allowing blood to kind of go wherever freely instead of directing it where it needs to go and taking that oxygen where it needs to go. This type of stroke is less common than the next type that we'll talk about, which is called an ischemic stroke. This one is more common and it's usually due to a blockage in the blood vessel. Blockages could be different reasons. We have kind of the example of a blood clot or atherosclerosis, like this plaque that builds up. Sometimes in your doctor's appointments, they may say, oh, this might be due to that bad cholesterol. And kind of while we're checking your cholesterol levels, seeing if this is starting to kind of build up or cut off, siphon off that blood vessel a little bit. Or maybe the perfect storm of a blood clot and plaque. Blood clots can result for different reasons. Sometimes in very elderly population when we're not used to getting up and moving and exercising a lot, blood circulation kind of slows down, and when blood kind of slows down or doesn't move, it forms clots. Some people could have clotting disorders. Maybe some people were in an auto accident or had surgery, and these were kind of some complications that resulted after the fact. But again, if you're following up with a doctor, they should be able to kind of more closely tell you why this blood clot appeared or where it maybe formed or came from. All right, pop quiz. What are the two types of strokes?
Hemorrhagic.
Good. I like that somebody said ischemic. That's a tough one to say. Good.
Sounds like $5 more.
So the other question that we get a lot in rehab when we have more time with patients, because we're actually doing hour-long or 90-minute therapy sessions, is why did this happen? Again, hopefully through additional imaging and testing when they were in the hospital or following up with their doctor, they'll maybe come to figure that out. But stroke isn't as simple sometimes. It's not always like, oh, it was your diet. It's because you ate barbecue every single day. It could be kind of a multitude of things and over a period of time. So the American Heart and American Stroke Association kind of broke these up into risk factors. They like to call them risk factors because if you're looking at all of these and going, oh, I have that, oh yeah, that applies to me too, then you're kind of counting how at risk you are. It's not to say that if you're managing those, then you're keeping your risk low. There is no cure for stroke. So the best thing to do is kind of be aware of what could eventually lead to it and do your best to try to kind of keep that risk low and put it off from happening anytime soon. So there are ones we can control and ones we can't. So the ones we can control, we're going to focus on first because there are several of those. The first one is high blood pressure. Who in here has high blood pressure? Yeah. It's so common that it's the leading cause of stroke. So at least if you are going to the doctor, do know that you have it, you're starting off great, because now that you know that you have it, you can work on addressing it. That can look like different things for different people. Sometimes it's medication to help keep it controlled. Other times it might be diet or exercise or a combination of all of them. But not controlling that blood pressure, a lot of times a long history of blood pressure that's uncontrolled could lead to that hemorrhagic stroke, where it's just that constant pressure through those vessels is just going to weaken them down over time. Another one is high cholesterol. Again, if you're not following up with a PCP, I mean, I'm 32 and I follow up with a PCP annually. I think it's important to know what's going on in your body as you get older, no matter what age you are, because anything could really happen at any time. But going to your primary appointments, having your blood drawn, them telling you what your lab work is, they're going to tell you your cholesterol. A lot of times cholesterol could be something more in your family history, if it's just the body itself doesn't really regulate it well, or again, could go back to that diet and exercise a little bit too. We're not really eating the right or healthier things, or we're not working it off, trying to get it out of the body. So that's cholesterol. That kind of falls in with our unhealthy diet. So what is a healthy diet are the things that we've been taught since we were very young. You know, fruits and vegetables, especially fresh or frozen and not canned or jarred where they have all the added things in them. Trying to watch fat content. Usually that's where it gets you with cholesterol too. So your leaner meats, chicken, turkey, fish is great. The omega-3s that you find in fish are great for your brain. So the more you could eat of fish during the week, the better off you could be too. Also focusing on unsalted nuts or seeds. They have like the good vitamins and healthier fats to them. And whole grains versus, you know, any kind of other bleached or processed, I guess, flour and baked goods. So that's it for a healthier diet. Diabetes is another risk factor. Whether you have type 1 or type 2, we can manage either type. And sometimes I'll tell people, you know, if you've been to a doctor's office and they give you a diagnosis and don't take the time to explain that, if you kind of go do your research on your own, you might scare yourself into making healthier habits. So, you know, people are like, oh, you know, diabetes, it's just my sugar gets high. Well, yeah, your sugar gets so high that it cuts off the oxygen to your brain. That's what happens. So, you know, if you happen to have the type where you can really control it by what you're eating, maybe you consider telling yourself, am I trying to cut off this oxygen to my brain for this cookie right now or not? Should I make some healthier choices? Smoking. Smokers have 2 to 4 times of a risk for having a stroke than those who don't. It includes any kind of tobacco product use as well, including vaping. So if you have high blood pressure and you smoke, you're extremely at risk. So we usually joke with our patients in the hospital and say, you've kind of already stopped smoking because we won't let you do it while you're here. So you're kind of starting that. And if you're wanting to continue smoking cessation, there are ways and programs to continue that with your primary doctor. And then also ways on educating you about the blood pressure again and managing that too on your own. Physical inactivity and excessive alcohol. We know that excessive alcohol is just not healthy in general. Alcohol is really harsh on the organs of your body, so it's kind of having a global impact on your body. Basic research says if you like having an alcoholic beverage, this is not as a stroke survivor, but just in general, they recommend 1 drink a day for women or 2 drinks a day for men. We always say too, it's important to know what medications you're taking and when you take them. Some people, you know, you're like, I take it this time of day, or I have stuff I take in the evening. That's when I have my glass of wine. And the alcohol content could be canceling out or doing away with the medication you're putting in your body. So it's worth talking about that with your doctor or the pharmacist on if you kind of like to have a beverage and when might be a smart time or if at all. Physical inactivity. So we also say, you know, we're seeing adults, we're seeing people mostly who have also retired and they want to relax, and they are definitely should relax and should have that time after working for so many years. But it's also important to continue to exercise. We have that common phrase that you hear, if you don't use it, you will lose it. And it's very true. So it doesn't have to be training for the St. Jude Marathon, but it could be something tailored to what you will actually do. You know, if you're like, someone's telling you to go do 50 push-ups and you're like, I'm not doing that. Tell that person that you're working with, whether it's your therapist or personal trainer, or you're looking for exercises online, pick the things that you will be motivated to do. Okay. So those were all the risk factors we can control, and there were a bunch. Tell me at least two that you
Diet.
diet and exercise and cholesterol. Great. So there are just a few that we cannot control. This can explain why things still happen, right? Because I didn't say there was a cure for stroke. Or sometimes when you're like, you hear of somebody who's had that happen, you're like, oh my God, they're like the epitome of health. How did that happen? And maybe it could be one of these things. So the first one is age. We know our chances for having a stroke right now doubles every 10 years after the age of 55. So that's why it's important to continue taking great care of yourself, or if you have bad habits, kicking them and really working on the healthier habits. The second one is gender. Research says right now that most women tend to have stroke because women tend to live longer than men, so going back to age. But then also the differences in just our biological makeup, our childbearing capabilities predispose us to a little bit more risk. If I had to throw this one out there as a side comment, maybe stress too. Women stress and multitask. Race and ethnicity. If we looked at research right now, it says that people who are most at risk or have most strokes are are African American. Second is Caucasian, and then third is Hispanic or Latino. So again, we know that there are differences among races, but then I think this also plays into lifestyle and culture. Maybe what are some things we're carrying on over time that aren't the healthiest, and kind of putting us in these tough medical situations. Family history. We're very genetically similar to our parents, grandparents, siblings. We always tell our patients, if you're the first one in your family to have a stroke, then you've got a great responsibility of telling them this could impact you, and I want you to know everything that I'm learning. The more you know sooner, maybe the quicker you can go and be checked out and catch something if that ends up being what it is. And then lastly, it's having a prior stroke, or we didn't talk about TIAs, but they are similar to strokes in that you can have the same symptoms, which we will talk about symptoms, but they kind of go away. It's kind of like they come on, you feel a little funny, and then they go away. And they're considered the warning signs or warning type strokes. But having had a prior stroke or TIA just kind of makes you more susceptible to re-injury in the future. So that's why it's another risk factor.
Can you go into TIAs?
Yes, sir. So people experience them differently from what I'm told. They are transient ischemic attacks. So transient meaning brief. That could be a minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, half the day. Ischemic, lacking oxygen. So something is cutting off that blood flow or limiting oxygen, and then an attack. So some people can experience those and maybe not be aware, or some of them can experience and go, I feel a little funny. I do believe that they can show up on imaging. It might be more the MRI versus a CAT scan. If they were to go to the hospital, the MRI kind of shows things that have happened in the past. CT or CAT scan is more like future, what's happening right, or current, what's happening right now. But again, they're considered the warning signs. So if you notice signs or symptoms, then that could be helpful.
What are the signs and symptoms?
We're going to get to that slide. We can skip this quiz question. I'll jump to that one. So signs and symptoms of a stroke. Usually you have numbness or weakness on one side of the body. It can affect the face, arm, or leg. And again, depending on where in the brain, it could affect all of it or just some of it. The next one is sudden confusion, trouble speaking or understanding. Sometimes if you're talking with someone, either on the phone or in person, they may catch it first and say, you sound funny, what's going on with you? Sudden trouble seeing in one or both eyes. We have vision usually towards the back of the brain, and so it could be blurry vision, double vision, can't see it all out of one side. Sudden trouble walking, dizziness, loss of balance or coordination. or sudden severe headache with no known cause. You don't have to experience all of those symptoms to be classified as a stroke. It could be one or a few. And they're really the only way they're going to know it's a stroke or diagnose it is if you go to the hospital and they do that imaging of your head. All right, and this is not a trick question, but I always ask it in my class. What should you do if you notice signs or symptoms of a stroke? What's the first thing you do? And I ask that because some people say, well, call my sister. I'll call my primary doctor. Why not call your primary doctor?
Because you need to deal with it quickly.
Yes. I don't know anybody who can go be seen immediately by their PCP. And the recording at the beginning says, if this is an emergency, please hang up and dial 911. And so we educate everybody, even if it's just that your arm feels numb. It's not drastic like you fell on the floor. That could still be a sign or symptom of stroke. Time is of the essence. Oxygen could be cut off somewhere. We need to go be seen immediately.
Now, realize I'm asking maybe a physician question, but let me, Callie, if I could. There's some introduction now, new products, talk oxygen infused beverages where they pump up the oxygen infused, along with the beach you see advertising out there. Do you have a particular comment on Phyllis putting you on the spot?
I don't. And I'm sorry, we also almost had our program physician, Dr. Nearing, who's a neurologist at Methodist University. We almost had her here today, and maybe she could have answered that for you. But we can definitely ask, and I can pass that information on to Michelle for her to report
It's
back.
kind of interesting to do a lot of advertising about oxygen infused beverages.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There's a medication that if you are having to, or even go about talk about TK. So there's a medication like if you are having these symptoms to, burst the help with it. The rupture or like the blood flow, the TNK.
Oh.
Yeah,
dissolve the clot.
Yeah, dissolve the clot. That's the word. Sorry. So there is a medication that and that's why it's so important to call 911 immediately, because if you do have an ischemic stroke, you can get this medication within a couple of hours to help reduce the effects of the stroke. And I did just meet with a stroke coordinator at Methodist Germantown, and she's been really looking through her stroke data. Sorry, I know we're out of time, but they have about 30% of their patients who came to be treated for a stroke came in by a personal vehicle, which means that actually eliminated a lot of time that if it came from a ambulance, they could have already maybe given that TNK. They could have already told the emergency room, we need to be seen by neuro to be treated faster to get that medication, to start that imaging. Because if you're taking your time, driving that 30-40 minutes to the hospital, that is waste of time. Sorry.
All right. 3 warning signs of a stroke. Your takeaway.
Numbness.
Numbness.
Vision.
Vision. Dizziness.
Slurred
Slurred
speech.
speech. Great.
Also about speech.
Yeah, loss of balance. Great. We can skip through these slides just to save time. And keep going. Oh, okay. Sorry. Any questions? I usually do have a copy of local stroke support groups. So if that's ever helpful for anybody in here, Michelle has access to that too. We can kind of disperse that, but we provide that to our patients. There are also caregiver support groups. I know we've talked about a lot of caregiver services, but we really do encourage our caregivers to go and be supported, take their time away, and be with other individuals too who are going through something similar. Yes, sir.
It's a bit of a tangent question, but in managing high cholesterol, are you aware of any risks involved in taking statins over a long period of time?
I'm not, but I've heard kind of some of, as I say, outside of my work, I've heard some of the kind of controversy on each side, like do you take it, don't take it. Again, I can definitely ask Dr. Nearing what her take is on that, and Michelle can share that with you guys, because I do think it's interesting.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
This is more of a comment. I was with someone who thought he was having a heart attack. We went to the ER and we were sitting and waiting. And he said, I'm really feeling funny. So I just went up and I said, he thinks he's having a heart attack. They had him back so bad. So if you go to the ER,